Your long-term memory also has this autobiographical quality about it, meaning that most of your memories that you remember for all of your life is stuff about you. We're pretty self-centered beings, right? So our autobiographical memory has many interesting features to it. One of these being infantile amnesia. And this is not a brain disorder. All it means is you can't remember being a baby. We all have this for some reason, and you actually read about it for Prep Guide 1. So if you want to connect this material back to stuff that you have already done, that's why I selected this article. Make sure to go back and read the answer key for that so that you can understand better what the author was talking about. But their main point was that some people think infantile amnesia or childhood amnesia comes from repressing dark memories, but maybe that's not always the case because everybody has infantile amnesia, even if you didn't have trauma. Trauma can sort of make your memories difficult to access, but it's not the only thing that can. It could be maybe language development. So around the same time that kids start acquiring a lot more memories that they'll remember into adulthood, they're also having rapid changes in their language development. So maybe after you acquire language, it's hard to remember stuff from that murky, primitive, animal-like state from before you could speak, right? So maybe it's just that your brain is so different before and after language that you would have memories from being a baby. You just can't reach them anymore because they weren't saved. They weren't encoded in a way that used language, which is pretty much how you encode all your memories now, is through language. But he had many other hypotheses that had a lot more evidence behind them, more so than the language one. There was stuff like maybe it's interactions between parent and child. So for little kids, they can't really provide enough context for their own memories and provide a story and explain what happened, but their parents do that for them. And parents who do that a lot help their children form the ability to kind of store their memories away using a story. And the younger that their parents do that with them, and the more often they do that with them, the earlier memories those people will be able to remember from their childhood. We also have what's called the reminiscence bump, which is almost the opposite of infantile amnesia. We all have this period in our lives where most of our memories that we're going to remember the rest of our lives come from then. And that's going to be in our adolescence and young adulthood. This could be for brain development reasons, because our brains are kind of just finishing up cooking, so to speak, in the prefrontal cortex, which is part of an area that has to do with a lot of understanding who we are. The reminiscence bump is the reason why everybody thinks that music was better back when they were a teenager and that this new music is not good. So most of their good memories of that music is just because they remember more from being a teenager or a young adult. Literally every generation in the history of recorded Western history has said this kind of stuff. So Plato, 2,000 years ago in ancient Greece, was complaining about how kids these days are singing the wrong types of music. They're using all these harmonies that they're not supposed to be using and stuff like that. So it's just because he remembered how music was when he was a teenager because of this reminiscence bump, and he didn't like how the new kids were doing it. So just think about that every time you don't understand your children's music or your little cousin's music or something like that in the future. We also tend to have the most memories of this time because we are experimenting with complex social relationships and romantic relationships. We may have met a lifelong partner in this late teen to early adulthood period. So there's a lot of things that happen to us that are very important during this time in our cultures anyway, that are going to affect us for the rest of our lives. So maybe that's another reason we remember the most memories from this age, and then the stuff we remember kind of drops off as we age. Flashbulb memories are another type of autobiographical memory, and they have some interesting features. And you actually read an article about this too for Prep Guide 3. It was Niedzwenska 2004, where that woman did the study about people's memories of 9/11 in a Polish university. And so flashbulb memories are those big typically tragic type memories where people always say, I remember exactly where I was and what I was doing. And it turns out most people don't actually. So if you were to test them, like let's say the day after, day or 3 weeks or something like that after 9/11, and you ask them what they were doing, and then you also ask them about, control memories, like what they had for breakfast that day or something, they remember them with about the same accuracy. So they get a lot of details wrong about what they remembered from 9/11. They get a lot of details wrong about what they had for breakfast. And so we have a strong confidence that these feelings are very, very vivid, that these memories are very, very accurate, but they're no more accurate than regular memories. We just have strong emotions about them. What Niedzwenska showed in 2004, though, in her study, was that her students who didn't take a memory class were the same as what I just told you, where they didn't remember their flashbulb memories very accurately. They were prone to a lot of biases in their memory. However, half of her participants went through a memory class where they were lectured just like this about autobiographical memory, except their entire semester was like all about memory. And those people had lower confidence in their memories, so they knew that their flashbulb memories might not be very accurate, right? So they assigned lower confidence to their memories, but their memory accounts, when she measured them 3 times to explain what happened, what were you doing on 9/11 when you heard about the news, there was more consistency across their accounts when she measured them 3 times compared to the people who did not take a memory class. So knowing how your memory works might actually improve your memory, because you might understand things like context-dependent retrieval that might help you retrieve your memories more accurately. And you also know that your memories are not perfect, whereas the average person who has not taken a cognitive psychology class doesn't really realize that. Autobiographical memory we also have another type of memory that didn't exactly fit onto our model before, and it's called prospective memory. Prospective memory is when you need to remember to do something in the future. And mostly what I need you to know about this, it's hard to categorize it as explicit or implicit. It's kind of a little bit of both. So prospective memory is another feature of autobiographical memory that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And I also want you to read about types of amnesia and remember the difference between retrograde and anterograde from your textbook.